So good morning. If you find that you need a little break and you find yourself a little sleepy, we don't mind that you stand up and walk and stand to the side. So we'd rather you be present than closing your eyes. So please take advantage of that. So we're one of those families where driving under the influence has affected us greatly. We know that you don't want to be here today. We know this is a real pain in the butt to come to. It's an inconvenience. You had to take time off of work. But I wish for God that I wasn't here. I wish I didn't have to be here to present our story. It's our son's story. And we hope that you will listen intently, to be somewhat moved and have empathy for us. And we don't want to shame you. We don't want this to be a shaming program. We just want you to be aware that this could happen to you, and it could happen to a loved one. And I am a mother, and I'm a mother against drunk and drugged and distracted driving. And this is a totally preventable event. If you think about it, this doesn't have to happen. And we hope that that this experience will make you pause a little bit to maybe think before getting behind the wheel of a vehicle. Just have a plan so that there are no more victims, just like our shirt says. That's the message of MAD. No more victims, whether it's you or someone you love. So it's been about 19 months that our 23-year-old son, Kyle, was murdered in a catastrophic, horrific, and fiery car crash caused by a drugged and reckless driver. On a Tuesday evening at 5:50 in the afternoon, Kyle was on a Monday chore of just going to pick up dinner for him and his girlfriend. He had just worked out. He was traveling on a rural roadway when the unimaginable happened. I'm an elementary school teacher, and I had applied for a teacher grant to study the art of storytelling in Ireland and Scotland. I applied for this grant in April of 2018 when I was awarded this grant. And then I began starting to plan our trip to Europe. We had never been to Europe before. It was a trip of a lifetime, and Kyle was so thrilled for us. He wished that he could attend with us, and I truly wish he was. When we arrived in Scotland on July 30th, there were some subtle signs that I had experienced. And in retrospect, it's very ironic. Just like these songs that are playing above the head of us, we were walking down the street, and this violinist was playing Amazing Grace. And I thought to myself, well, that's usually the song you play at a funeral. I remember thinking that. Then we walked down the street a little more. We found a tavern to eat dinner. It was the oldest tavern in Scotland. And it was called The World's End. Then, after dinner, we went to a whiskey shop. And I was going to wait towards the end of our trip to get some trinkets for my kids. And I picked up this horn mug, Game of Thrones mug. And I was like, oh, Kyle loves Game of Thrones. Picked it up, put it down, walked around, went back to it, picked it up again. And Larry says that I was hugging this mug. I don't remember that, but I'm like, I'm gonna get this for Kyle. And I did. So 3 signs. And thinking back, a month prior to our trip, I had the inclination that something bad was going to happen. I don't know what it was. I thought that maybe Larry would have a heart attack or we would be hurt in some way. And I had this uneasy feeling. I even told my sister, I just have this feeling that something horrific is going to happen. A few days prior to our trip, we sat the kids down and said, okay, this is where all the insurance, all the documents are. And Kyle said to me, I remember he was sitting right next to me, he's like, Mom, why are you doing this? Why do you think something bad's gonna happen? And I'm like, Kyle, I don't know, we just need to be prepared. And I kept telling myself that it was unlikely that something bad was gonna happen. And you can't cancel a trip because of your gut feeling, right? You can't. But my intuition was spot on. Something horrible did happen. And I have such guilt about it. At 3:20 in the morning, Scotland time that same evening, the phone rang in my hotel room. It was right next to me. I picked it up, and on the other end was the police chief telling us the one thing that every parent fears most in life. On the other end, I remember his exact words. He had told me that there was a crash on Route 16 in East Hampton. And I'm running through my mind, where was my daughter? What was she doing? Oh my God, it's Kyle. I knew it. Before the words came out of his mouth, I knew what he was about to say. And I replay that over and over and over for the last 19 months, and I'm sure I will for the rest of my life. I kept the police chief on the phone for over 25 minutes. I don't know how I did it. I kept firing off questions. Was there anyone else in the car? What happened? Where was it? Where is he? I just kept firing questions off. And I could hear Larry in the background calling our daughter, and I'm still keeping this police chief on the phone. Then I hear him calling his mother, and I hear all of this in the background. And in retrospect, I think I kept him on the phone because it was my one connection to my kid. And I guess that's why I did that. And just imagine that if your mother or your partner or your child got that phone call, how they would feel. As I hung up the phone, I quickly realized, because it was 3:20 Scotland time and 10:20 Connecticut time, that it was July 31st. It was my 52nd birthday. My kid was killed on my birthday. So think about that. I will never, ever. I don't want any phone call, any text, any mention of my birthday. So Kyle's life was cut way too short. It's an unfinished life. There was so much ahead of him. What it could have been is too painful to even think about. And even looking at all you young men, with beards especially, is really hurtful because you remind me of my son. Grief feels like a deep, thick fog that is always surrounding us. Grief lingers. It sets up camp, and it stays in us. And it's always unfolding, like an emotional tsunami, with calm cycles, massive denial, and fits of rage. I even had a fit on Sunday when he left the house, because I don't like to do it in front of him. I screamed, and I yelled, and I still can't believe this has happened to us. I am still in such denial. We are muddling through life, going to work, being functional, trying to connect with others, and being those responsible adults, because Kyle would expect us to do that. And I also won't let the people that killed my son get me, break me. I always think of that. I am not going to let that happen to me. And my brain is always overworking. to make sense of something that will never, ever make sense. My intellectual faculties have literally changed. My memory is really poor. I can't remember people's names. I can't remember objects. My attention span is really short. And my drive is virtually non-existent when I can be. And grief does that. It literally rips away your skill sets that I once had. And it makes the simplest things really hard to accomplish. Just getting out of bed is a challenge at times. And we always say to each other, just remember to breathe. That's all we have to do. Just imagine how you would feel if this happened to you. It's really the unimaginable. Nobody can really imagine what this feels like. So Kyle's death has changed us in profound ways. We are changed by these new realities. I will never be normal again. I carry it with me. Our home feels empty. And part of my motherhood, I feel like half of my motherhood is actually gone. As a mom, we're supposed to protect our kids, right? Keep them safe. And I couldn't do that. I couldn't keep Kyle safe. And I feel so much guilt around it. If I just didn't apply for this grant, I wouldn't have been there. And Kyle likely would not have been killed. That's the guilt that I carry. And people say that parenting is one of the hardest jobs you will ever have in life. And for those of you that are parents, you know how difficult it is. It's the one job that will have generational consequences, whether they're good or bad. It's the one job that can have perpetual cycles of hate, selfishness, and dysfunction, and that cycle continues, or the opposite of kindness, compassion, and civility. So things came a little bit easier for our daughter. Our daughter Lindsay is a nurse at Hartford Hospital. And like a lot of young men, and probably a lot of men here, things were a little bit harder, trying to figure out what life was going to bring him. And many of us all struggle with what we want to be when we grow up. Well, Kyle was trying to figure that out. Kyle had attended 4 different colleges within 2 years, switching every semester, getting lots of college debt along the way. And he finally decided on a major of sports management. What every kid loves most in life a lot of times is sports. He had a lot of internships making less than minimum wage. He worked for the New York Jets and the New Britain Bees, and finally landed a gig in baseball as a video scout. And Kyle was so passionate about baseball. And he learned the game. He learned about AA, AAA players. He knew everyone in the majors and the minors, the college. And it was really his passion. And you know where he learned that? And he'd always say to me, you know, Mom, playing video games does pay off. He would play that MLB video PlayStation 3 over and over and over. And that's really where he learned about stats. And he loved that. And then he spent most of his time with his girlfriend of 6 years. Her name was Jamie. And she was the one who called Chinese food for Kyle to go pick up that night. And think about the guilt that she must be carrying. We can't even eat Chinese food. We haven't even gone to a restaurant since Kyle died. So this catastrophic tragedy has taken us prisoners. And the thought of everyone else's life getting back to normal, they're still living their lives, well, we're living our lives in this wreckage. It's overwhelming and it's frustrating. And as everyone else's lives continue, we feel like our life is standing still in the summer of 2018. We can't easily attend holidays and gatherings and parties. And I just keep imagining as I see people in the grocery store or in my neighborhood or in town, I just keep thinking, they are probably thinking, thank God I'm not them. I'm jealous of seeing other families intact. And these special and significant family moments are really hard to put on a happy face. How can we celebrate togetherness when our family is not? 3 days before Kyle was killed, our daughter had gotten engaged. Larry and I were out in the garden that day. We didn't have our cell phones. Kyle was the first one she called. We were so happy. We spent the night before we left for Europe at a family dinner. And that was where Lindsay and Kyle had decided, because they were so close, they were only 17 months apart, they had decided that Kyle would be his man of honor. He would stand up next to his sister. And at first, Kyle was a little reluctant. He's like, you know what? I got this. He said to Lindsay, he's like, you know what? I can rock a bridal shower. I'll hang penises everywhere. I got this. So we know that this wedding that will be coming up in the fall is going to be really joyous for us, but it's also going to bring a lot of sorrow. And we're going to have a place setting for Kyle, but it'll be empty. So we try to pretend to soldier on, that we are somewhat normal and we aren't hurting, but that's not the truth. And we feel like this picture book. This is a child who is at recess, standing all the way outside of everyone else playing. And the author writes, there will be times when the world feels like a place that you're standing all the way outside of. And that's how we feel every day. Everyone's life continues, and ours is stuck. We have to learn to live with the unimaginable, becoming a member of the club that no one ever wants to be part of. Parents are not supposed to outlive their kids. And the police chief, every time we saw him, said repeatedly over and over, this was a totally preventable event. Kyle was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He did not have to die. So our deepest desire is that some positive change will come from this tragic event. Our destiny is to live our lives in a way that would make Kyle proud. Our broken hearts and our grief will not be in vain. This doesn't give our life purpose, it actually gives our grief a purpose. So everyone makes mistakes, right? They help us learn life lessons. And just like when children make mistakes, young children, they learn from that, right? I learn every single day. I make mistakes with kids. I'll say the wrong thing. I learn from that. That's what makes us grow. And even as adults, same for you. What brought you here today will hopefully let you grow and learn from it so that this doesn't happen to you or a loved one, because this is preventable. And this is the message of MAD. Make good choices. We tell that kids every day, make good choices. Make good choices out at recess. Make sure you keep your hands to yourself, all those things. Same with you. Make good choices. No more victims. Because we all share these roadways together, right? There are lots of roadways, and you see distracted drivers all the time. You don't know if they're drunk, you don't know if they're drugged, you don't know if they're on their cell phones. So be careful and make good choices. The 29-year-old that had killed our son had made multiple mistakes over an 11-year period. She was arrested multiple times, and she even spent time in prison. When she got out of prison, she was dismissed, so she wasn't on parole. No one was checking in with her. She became hooked on drugs in prison. She was driving highly impaired with extreme levels of PCP and marijuana. Driving erratically with high speeds. She decided to take a 40-year-old passenger along with her who was also on PCP. They were in the ride of a lifetime. They used this vehicle as a lethal weapon, deadlier than any handgun, and destroyed our son's body. Driving over 110 to 116 miles an hour in the wrong lane on a rural roadway. We couldn't say goodbye to our son. We weren't even in the country when this happened. All we could do was to lay his beloved Jason Varitek Red Sox shirt in his casket. And we'll explain later why. There were over 700 people who attended Kyle's funeral. And Kyle came from a really small high school, like 83 kids were in his class. But Kyle touched many people. On his off gig of baseball, he worked in a window part factory. As people were coming through the line at the funeral home, they kept saying how much Kyle was a generous and kind soul. We never realized how many people Kyle had touched. Kyle's job, this little job, actually closed up shop the morning of Kyle's funeral, hired a school bus, paid their employees to attend Kyle's funeral, and drove over an hour. That tells you the type of kid he was. I don't think I would get 700 people at my funeral. Kyle was a kind and gentle old soul. He respected others and was very compassionate. And people would say he was always the first one to say good morning to everyone, and then say, have a great afternoon, have a good evening. And you know what, nowadays, nobody even says good morning. I walk down my hallway at school, I'll say good morning to kids, nothing. I'll say good morning to adults, nothing. Like, what is it lately? Just say good morning, be kind to each other. Kyle rallied around others and was always so positive. He was a really good, genuine kid, and I know all parents say that, but he truly was. So sharing our grief with you today lets us honor our son, our family, and honors our broken heart with you. Surviving is finding the connection between the life that was ours and our new life that has been thrust upon us because of someone's poor choices and getting behind the wheel of a car highly impaired. So the edges of our grief are really raw and ragged. And gone with him are the 1,000 things that made Kyle so full of life. Gone is the anticipation of seeing where life was going to bring him. Gone is the sound of his laughter and the warmth of his smile and seeing him play those video games over and over and over. Gone is his positive outlook on life because he was that kid who looked at life with a glass half full. But everything is not half full anymore. A piece of our heart, our soul, and part of our being is gone forever. Things will never be the same for my family, but I know for sure the world's a better place for the years that Kyle had lived, his short 23 years. I'm a better person for being Kyle's mom, for the years we spent together, and for what he taught me in his life and in his death.
This is a sign we put up at the crash scene on the 1-year death date. We don't call it an anniversary. Anniversary is something you celebrate. I'm not celebrating my kid getting murdered. There's one thing that Erin didn't touch upon. I want to make sure everybody can hear me, right? Can you hear me? Driving is a privilege. It's not a right. You don't have the right to drive. You have a privilege to drive. You have to earn that privilege. That's one thing everybody forgets. Everybody thinks it's a right to drive. It's not a right. It's a privilege that you have to earn. So, on the morning of the day Kyle got murdered, he ordered this shirt. We didn't know. We weren't in the country. We didn't know. So we got back in the country, and that Saturday morning of after we got home, I went to the mailbox and opened it up, and this had come. It was a package. It was addressed to him. I didn't even have the heart to open it. I came walking in and I threw it on the counter. And she goes, "Aren't you going to open it?" Erin asked me if I was going to open it. And I kind of hem and hawed. This was kind of one of the first signs that he had sent us. So I opened it up. And when I opened it up and looked at it, it fitted perfect, because Kyle, when he got frustrated with the world or with me, he would say, "Dad, fuck this or fuck that." So here's this t-shirt that I open up and I read it, and that's how I feel every single day. Kind of puts it really into perspective, how I really feel every single day. Because somebody's poor choices. And again, it's all about choices. So, if everybody wants to know what a 110 or 116 mile an hour crash looks like, this is what it looks like. I'm in the automotive business, been in the automotive business for 40 years. I know what it is to take an engine out of a car. Never mind take it to separate it from one another. So if you look at those two chunks of metal right by the yellow line there, that is the motor and transmission that's ripped out of that car in two pieces. So it ripped the motor and transmission apart from one another. Not only did it pull it out of the car. Okay? Does anybody think there's another car in that crash scene? We're going to get to that. Just so everybody knows, and I know that I'm not a popular person when I say this, she got off easy. She was killed on impact. She was ripped out of that car and she was thrown 39 feet past the accident. 39 feet down the road. On the opposite side of the road. Totally mangled on the side of the road. So she got off easy. The woman that was in the car, they had to cut her out. They tried to get her on the Life Star, but she didn't make it. That's the front end of her car.
The car is blowing up. There's a dead person on the side of the road. Bad head-on collision.
So, like we said, she was doing between 110 and 116 miles an hour. Never touched the brakes. She was completely on his side of the road. That road there was a blind curve. It was all overgrown. So let's be real. Kyle was probably doing 55, 60. I'm not a dumb father. He was in Erin's 2012 Jeep Wrangler 4-door. She was in a 2018 Chevy Malibu. The Malibu weighed 750 pounds less than my Jeep. When she hit the Jeep, I'm going to use the baseball analogy. like somebody throwing a fastball down the middle. She hit Kyle so hard it stopped my Jeep in its tracks and drove it back 29 feet backwards before it became airborne after doing a 180-degree turn up over the guardrail without ever touching the guardrail. Did a half a barrel roll and landed on its side in the woods. There was trees in the woods that held it from sliding down an embankment that's a 30-degree embankment. When the police officer got there, he climbed up on top of the passenger side of the car. He ran around, climbed up on the passenger side, looked down. Kyle was alive and breathing. It pushed the A-pillar back on the car. That's where your door bolts to the front. It pushed the A-pillar back 1.5 feet. Trapping him in the car. The car was on fire. There was people that were bystanders that were there that were trying to throw dirt and anything they could to put the fire out in the car. There was a plumber that pulled up in his truck and started handing fire extinguishers to people that he had in the truck. He started throwing out fire extinguishers, every single one he had in the truck. There was a pile of about 8 of them there. The vehicle ended up rolling onto its roof. When the police officer was on top of it, he just barely got out of the way. They cut the seat belt and tried to pull Kyle out. They couldn't get him out. The fire got so big that they had to pull the police officer out of the car because the police officer didn't want to leave him. Three tanker trucks of water. So think about a swimming pool, in-ground swimming pool, 10,000 gallons about. 3 tankers of water to put the fire out, plus aviation foam. Kyle was alive. When we got the autopsy report, Kyle died of blunt force trauma to the head, torso, and neck. He had aviation foam in his lungs. You don't get aviation foam in your lungs unless you're breathing.
And smoke inhalation.
And smoke, yeah. So you're breathing. He was burnt beyond recognition. My daughter had to send dental records for him to be identified. The only place Kyle had skin was on his left foot, his right inner thigh, and his right ass cheek. That's the only place my kid had skin left because of somebody's piss poor decision. This is reality, people. This isn't made up stuff. I live this every single day. She lives it every single day. My daughter lives it every single day. This is the Jeep after they got it out and tied off to the guardrail so it wouldn't slide down the hill. Kyle's still trapped inside. That's when I got to see it. So, thank God that the fire department made a pact that night. They were so shook up over this, just so everybody knows too, they told everybody that I've talked to tells me this is the worst crash scene they've ever been on. From DOT, state police, town police, firefighters, first responders, medical. So my very good friend, brother-in-law, is a paramedic. He was the first paramedic on scene. He's still going for counseling, and he still doesn't know if he still wants to go on with being a paramedic. That's how bad it was. Every time his beeper goes off or the alarm goes off and he has to go, he literally shakes. This didn't just affect me, it affected a lot of people. So those first responders made a pact that they were going to cut Kyle out in one piece. So it took about 2 hours to cut him out of the car in one piece. They didn't dismember him in any way. And I thank God for that. I'm glad they gave him that much respect. When they do a crash scene, they go 350 feet out in each direction. This one went out 750 feet and they still didn't cover it all in both directions. Basically a football field. I'm still finding things at the crash site and it's 19 months later. It's a sacred place for us. They brought in grief counselors there was 80 plus people there that night on scene. They closed the road down for hours to investigate it. They had to bring in, like I said, they brought in grief counselors for the first responders on scene. That's how bad it was. So it didn't just affect me, didn't affect Erin, it didn't affect my family. It affected a whole community. Whole community for somebody's bad decisions, okay? And we all make them. That little part-time job that Kyle worked. On his birthday, they gave us tickets to the Red Sox game. Kyle was a huge Red Sox fan, crazy. My father grew up in Springfield, so he gave me the curse, and I passed the curse on to my kids for the Red Sox. So that little part-time job gave us tickets to the Red Sox game. We went to the Red Sox game. So at the Red Sox game, they let us know that on the big screen, they put up in love and memory of Kyle. So on his birthday, I didn't get to hear, hey, Pops, thank you for, he called me Pops. I'm never going to hear Pops again. That's really another thing that hurts really bad. He always would say, hey, Pops. Don't worry, Pops, I got this. Never going to hear that. I got in love and memory of Kyle on his birthday. That's all I got. I didn't get to spend it with him. I'm never going to get to spend it with him again. Lost my fishing buddy. I lost a lot. We lost a lot. Lost everything. So just remember that. This is what we put up at the crash site. The plaque, it says, you will always be loved, you will always be missed, and you will always be remembered. It's one thing everybody forgets here, too. When we die, at some point in time when our loved ones are gone, we're all forgotten. We kind of forget that. We're just a number here. Unless you're Martin Luther King, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, or somebody that people are going to remember. Otherwise, we're all forgotten. Every single one of us. We're just a number. The other thing is we all have problems. You have problems, I have problems. Maybe your problems were what made you do what you did, I don't know. But you got to take a good hard look in the mirror at yourself. Because you guys are the only ones that can change your problems. I'm the only one that can change my problems. Nobody's going to come to you one day and say, oh, I'm going to take all your problems away. That's not how life works. So you're the only one that can change your situation. You're the only one that can change your problem. You're the only one that can change your habits. Nobody's going to do it for you. So you have to take a good hard look in the mirror and say, what are you going to do? What am I going to do to change? Because I want everybody to know here, you all get to leave here today and have a second chance, third chance, fourth chance, fifth chance, whatever it may be. I don't really care. Everybody gets to walk out this door and get a clean slate, basically. My kid didn't get one. He went to pick up Chinese food. A 23-year-old kid that would get in a car, take his cell phone, and put it in the center console. Wouldn't even look at it. 23 years old. Wouldn't look at it. Would not look at or call or text anybody until he got to wherever he was. Because sometimes he would text me, I would answer him back, and And I'm like an hour later, I'm like, what? Dad, I was driving. I won't pick it up. I won't look at it. 23 years old. We're not that important. Everybody thinks we're important. We all think we're important, but we're not. All that stuff can wait. Drinking and driving, drugging and driving. If you take prescription drugs and it says do not operate heavy machinery, you're driving under the influence. You can be arrested. Just because the doctor gave it to you doesn't mean that it's okay to drive. I'm not telling anybody not to go out and have a good time. I drink. I don't drink and drive anymore. I was one of the lucky ones in my younger life. I will not drink and drive anymore. I will not do a lot of things that I used to do. All I'm hoping is that you people hear the message, have a plan. Uber, Lyft, AmRide. There's all three of them. You can get an app for. They take credit cards. There's no reason to drink and drive anymore. Or drug and drive. Or whatever you do and drive. There's no reason for it anymore. If you go out and have a good time, spend the extra $25 to get your asses home and be safe and sound without killing you or somebody else. So nobody has to get this phone call. Because I'm going to tell you right now, guys, this is something we live every single day. It is the worst of the worst of the worst. And it's never going to go away. Never, ever. I just hope he's there the day I die and he's waiting and he says, Pops, I've been waiting for you. God, I hope. And I'm not a religious guy. Thank you.